Good morning, students. Today's topic is physiology of growth and development. So, the terms growth and development are intimately interdependent and interacting with each other. Growth per se refers to an increase in physical size as the child grows to adulthood, while development refers to maturity, that is, improvement in the capability of tissue. They are therefore termed together to signify a process of maturation both in quality and quantity. So, growth means an increase in physical size, that is, the child developing into an adult. And development refers to maturity, that is, the tissues, the things which are present, cells and tissues which are present in the body are developing to the maturity so that they are able to do their functions normally. So they together signify a process of maturation both in quality and quantity. So the terms growth and development are interdependent and interacting with each other. So growth and developmental age periods are: zygote is the very first stage of life formed after fertilization by the union of egg and sperm, and embryo is the first 8 weeks after fertilization, and fetus is from 8th week till birth, and neonate from birth till 1 month, and infancy or infant period is from 2nd month to 1st year. Toddler is from 1 year to 3 years, and preschool 3 to 6 years. Middle childhood is 6 to 12 years, and late childhood or adolescence is 13 to 18 years. So, growth is defined by scientists like Todd, Huxley, and Meredith, etc. It is a process of physical maturation resulting in an increase in size of the body and various organs. It occurs by multiplication of cells and an increase in intracellular substance. It is quantitative changes of the body. And development is the process of functional and physiological maturation of the individual. It is the progressive increase in skill and capacity to function. It is related to maturity and myelination of the nervous system. It includes psychological, emotional, and social changes. It is qualitative aspect. So both growth and development are increase in quantity and quality. So the differences between growth and development are: in physical sense, growth is present and development is change in shape, form resulting in improved function. In growth is changes in quantitative and development is changes in qualitative aspects. And growth does not continue throughout the life, stops when maturity attained, and development continues throughout the life and is progressive. So human life starts from a single cell, that is zygote, to embryo, and then fetus, and then child, after birth child, and then grows into the adult. So growth and development is seen only in the living organisms. So why this growth and development is needed, and it is seen only in living organisms? So for optimum function or for existence. So for optimum function, growth and development is needed. And then the difference between the child and an adult is in the size and matured functions. So Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine is given to Stanley Cohen and Rita Levy for their contribution in discoveries of growth factors in 1986. And developmental period, if you see in lower animals, so it varies, it depends depending on the animal, it varies from days to years. And in human growth, it is not uniform throughout the life as seen in rat, which is slow and progressive. It is a complex phenomenon involving integrated development of physical, mental, immunological and reproductive process. So the principle of growth and development is that it occurs throughout the lifespan. Development occurs throughout the lifespan, and growth is it stops after the person gets maturity. And it occurs in cephalocaudal direction and proximodistal direction, general to specific. So cephalocaudal direction is the process from head down to tail. This means improvement in structure and function comes first in the head region, then in the trunk, last in the leg region. And proximodistal is From center or midline to periphery direction, development proceeds from near to far, outward from central axis of the body towards the extremities. And general to specific is that children use their cognitive and language skills to reason and solve problems. Children at first are able to hold the big things by using both arms. In next part, able to hold things in a single hand, then only able to pick small objects like peas, cereals, etc. And children, when able to hold pencil, first starts drawing circles, then squares, then only letters, after that words. So the general large using children use their language skills and cognitive skills to solve problems, reasoning and solving, and then they are able to hold big things using both arms and then hold things in a single hand, and then only small, that is specifically small objects, they are able to hold. So the development proceeds from general to specific responses. And growth of a person, overall we can say tissue growth and then tissue growth differentiation. So tissue growth is in the form of hyperplasia and hypertrophy, which brings about physical growth. And differentiation, that is different growth patterns are observed in human and brings about functional maturation, that is development. So pattern of growth during fetal life. So this is gestational, after birth, and then postnatal period. The crown to heel length grows on increasing, and crown to heel length velocity, if you see, that is in the gestational period it comes to a peak in 20 weeks, and then after birth, till birth it slowly declines, and then the velocity is very slow after birth. And the pattern of growth and development during childhood and adolescence is given by Scamon's growth curve. So the types of tissue growth patterns are physical or general, neural, lymphoid, and then reproductive. So 4 types of growth curve are seen. So this is very important. So till now we have seen only the introduction. So these growth curves are very important. So 4 types of growth patterns are there. So on the x-axis we have age in years, and on y-axis percentage of size at age 20. So first one physical or general, and then second one neural and lymphoid growth curve, and then reproductive growth curve. So the first physical or general, it is in this almost linear. So as the age increases, so somewhat S-shaped. Okay, so this is general growth curve. So again we will see in detail about these curves. So the neural curve is like this upon the general growth curve. So it shows very rapid growth after birth. And then lymphoid also you can see at the 10 to 14 or 16 years at that time period it is having a peak. And then reproductive, so till puberty it is having very slow growth, and after puberty, attaining puberty, its sudden rise is seen. So the first general growth curve, we can see 4 distinct phases: a rapid increase in growth, a slow progressive growth, and second rapid growth and slow growth after puberty. So the first growth spurt occurring in infancy is characterized by increase in birth weight 2 times by 6 months of age, and 3 times at 1 year, and 4 times at 2 years. And height increases in increments of 2 to 2.5 cm per month in first year of postnatal life. Thereafter it slows down. And the second growth spurt, that is the that is at the time of puberty, it characterized by rapid increase in weight gain, and during this period the rapid growth of bones is brought about by various endocrinal influence, and again after that the growth slows down. So the same which I have told you, so you can see in the picture, in the first spurt, that is 3 years, occurs during infancy, that is infantile growth spurt. This is characterized by increase in birth weight and increase in height, and weight increases from 3 to 12 kg. 30% of adult growth is achieved. And then slow progressive, that is from first star to second star. So it is from 3 to 10 years, and by the end of 10 years 60% of adult growth is achieved. And second rapid growth is seen at 10 to 16 years, that is pubertal growth spurt. Weight gain and also height gain is present. Average age of pubertal growth in girls is 12 to 14 and boys is 14 to 16 years, and it is due to secretion of sex hormones and growth hormone and IGF. And increase in weight in girls due to fat deposition and in boys due to muscular growth. And after puberty, that is 16 to 20 years, there is slow growth. This continues up to 20 years, and thus we saw 2 growth spurts at infancy, at here, and then at puberty, this point. So the general or physical growth curve is having 4 phases, one at infancy and other, that is first growth spurt, and then slow phase, and then again at second growth spurt at puberty, and after again slow phase from puberty to, that is 16 to 20 years. And the second curve is neural growth curve. It shows growth of brain, spinal cord and visual apparatus. It grows rapidly after birth, and at the end of first year of postnatal life, brain growth is 60%. At the end of second year, it is 80%, and at the end of fifth year, it is almost 100% of adult. And the head circumference is important up to 3 to 5 years of age, and number of neurons are not increased. Increase in size of neurons and dendrite branching and number of synapses is present. Early age malnutrition can affect the growth of brain. So the initial 5 years, so the second 1 and 2 years are very important, because almost 80% of the brain growth occurs. So lymphoid growth, the lymphoid organs like tonsils, adenoid, thymus, spleen, lymph nodes and lymphoid tissue of intestine are considered here, and they show rapid growth during infancy and childhood. Why? Because the reason is that they are very much important in the maintaining the immunity of the person. So the size of partial, and this growth is reaches maximum by 10 to 12 years and declines after that. And the reason for declining is that the partial involution occurs of these tissues at puberty. So the more enlargement of tonsils is not an indication for removing them surgically, because they automatically involute at puberty. And then reproductive growth curve. So the organs considered are gonads and accessory reproductive organs, and they remain dormant in childhood, grow at rapid rate around puberty. This rapid growth is due to secretion of gonadotrophins. The gonadal growth pattern is opposite to that of neural growth pattern. A different type of growth is shown by adrenal glands and uterus. They are relatively large at birth, and then they lose weight rapidly, regain their birth weight just before puberty. So the factors affecting growth and development are adequate and favorable factors leading to optimum growth. So the genetic factor, first one, most important deciding factor of growth. Up to certain extent, gene expression decides the height. Children of tall and heavy parents are likely to have the same stature. Some races are taller in comparison to others. Difference between male and female growth pattern, adolescent spurt, appear to be genetically controlled via hypothalamus. And then the nutritional factors. So for optimum growth, balanced diet is necessary. It must be adequate not only in calories but also in protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins and minerals. Their requirement increase during active periods of growth, and undernutrition and malnutrition in childhood is responsible for stunting of growth. If lack of nutrition is prolonged, severe stunting occurs, which may be irreversible. And if lack of nutrition is less severe and for short period, stunting may be reversible by restoring normal diet, leading to compensatory increase in rate of growth. This is called catch-up growth. The mechanisms for catch-up growth are unknown, but recent evidence suggests that it may be related to the rate of stem cell differentiation within the growth plates. And undernutrition affects the growth of different organs and tissues unevenly. Dietary deprivation affects muscles and fat more than the bone, and skeletal maturation is less affected than skeletal growth. Total brain growth is inhibited more than myelination. And at puberty, malnutrition affects the genitals less commonly than other organs. And then environmental factors are, they comprise of the intrauterine prenatal factors for a fetus and postnatal factors for the newborn. So the prenatal factors, that is before birth when they are in uterus, the environmental factors include maternal malnutrition, and that is everything about mother. Maternal infection, maternal substance abuse, and maternal illness, and hormones and miscellaneous. And postnatal, that is after birth, the growth potential of the baby and nutrition given to the child, and childhood illness, physical environment, psychological environment, and the cultural influences where the child is growing, and socio-economic status of the family, climate and season factors, and play and exercise by the child, and birth order of the child, intelligence of the child, hormonal influence. So all these factors will influence the growth and development of the child. And then metabolic growth, it is the balance between anabolism and catabolism. So growth is due to anabolism, for which energy is driven from catabolism. Protein anabolism is favored by growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and insulin. And catabolism is favored by glucocorticoids secreted by adrenal cortex. And next most important is the hormonal factors. So out of the hormonal factors, the first and most important one is the growth hormone, and then insulin, and then thyroid hormone, and then sex hormones, and cortisol. So the growth hormone is a major stimulus of postnatal growth. It induces precursor cells to differentiate and secrete insulin-like growth factor IGF-1, which stimulates cell division. It stimulates liver to secrete IGF-1, that is stimulating the protein synthesis. And insulin stimulates fetal growth. It stimulates postnatal growth by stimulating the secretion of IGF-1, and also it stimulates the protein synthesis. Thyroid hormones are responsible for permissive growth hormone secretion and action. So it has the permissive action. So it influences the production of the growth hormone. It is permissive for development of central nervous system. And then sex hormone, testosterone stimulates growth at puberty in large part by stimulating the secretion of growth hormone. It causes eventual epiphyseal closure, and it stimulates protein synthesis in male. And estrogen stimulates secretion of growth hormone at puberty. It causes eventual epiphyseal closure. And cortisol inhibits the growth, and it stimulates protein catabolism. So this curve, again this chart, we can call it as physiology of growth curves. So one is thyroid, and one is growth hormone, and then androgens and estrogens, that is sex hormones. So growth hormone curve, how it is starting from the growth hormone, it is present from the birth, and then again it increases till 2 years, and then slows down, plateau phase, and then again after 16 it slows down. And thyroid hormones, it is present after birth. Okay, so from the 4 years you can see the growth, its influence is very slow. And then gonadotrophins, androgens and estrogens, their action comes at the puberty. So thyroxine is essential for growth in late fetal life and first few years of postnatal life. Okay, so until 4 years it is very much important, thyroxine. So you can see here till this plateau phase from birth to 4 years. And then growth hormone, in contrast to thyroxine, does not seem to be of critical importance during fetal and early postnatal life. Infants with congenital deficiency of growth hormone have normal height and weight up to about 2 years, after which a decrease in the velocity of growth becomes apparent. And sex hormones are the most essential around puberty and play an important role in the development of. So you can see thyroxine is very much essential till infancy, that is till 4 years. And growth hormone, though it is not present till 2 years, there is no change in height and weight up to 2 years. Okay. So growth hormone secreted by antenatal pituitary, you know all these things, and the action of growth hormone on its receptor causes dimerization of two GH receptors forming a dimeric complex, and it activates tyrosine kinase and protein kinase, causing phosphorylation of the receptor. And the importance is that it determines the height of individual during childhood by promoting linear growth in the skeleton. Also increases size of muscle, connective tissue and viscera. So these are all the actions, that is physiological effects of growth hormone on growth by trophic effect and metabolic effect. So growth promoting effects are on the bones and joints. It causes linear growth of the body, and indirect action is mediated by a family of peptide hormones called IGF, or formerly known as somatomedins. So somatomedins are present in liver and tissues leading to growth. These are of three types, A, B, C. A is IGF-2 and C is IGF-1. So C are not required during fetal growth. IGF-1 is not required during fetal growth, and A is required for fetal growth, and its secretion is largely independent of GH. And in fetus, when IGF-2 is overexpressed, the growth of organs is disproportionate. So these are very important points. C is not required for fetal growth, that is IGF-1, and A is required for fetal growth. Its secretion is largely independent of GH. So A secretion is independent of GH. And IGF-1 concentration in plasma closely follows the rate of growth hormone secretion. Spikes of GH secretion are larger during puberty. Half-life of growth hormone in plasma is 20 minutes, whereas somatomedin C is 20 hours. And are somatomedins responsible for all effects of growth hormone? The answer is no, because metabolic effect of growth hormone are independent of IGF-1, that is somatomedins. So GH plus IGF-1 are required for proper growth. So are the somatomedins are responsible for all effects of growth hormones? Means the answer is no, because the effects of GH are independent of IGF-1, but both GH and IGF are required for proper growth of the individual. And the growth factors are epidermal growth factor, platelet derived growth factor, fibroblast growth factor, nerve growth factor and ovarian growth factor. And the pattern of growth hormone secretion, as you already know, it is pulsatile. And the factors affecting growth hormone secretion, the stimulatory factors and inhibitory factors. So all these things already we have covered in our starting endocrines only. So next, thyroid hormones are permissive to growth hormone. They are required during intrauterine life as well as after birth. They stimulate growth by direct effect on metabolism and indirectly by increasing growth hormone and IGFs, and they are required for tissue differentiation and maturation. They stimulate the branching of dendrites, myelination and increases number of synapses. And androgens and estrogens are responsible for growth spurt at puberty. They stimulate secretion of growth hormone and IGF-1. Testosterone is most anabolic, results after more pubertal growth in male, and it increases weight in male, that is muscular mass, by testosterone, and in females fat deposition by estrogen. So estrogen is more potent than testosterone for having action on epiphyseal growth plate. It first stimulates the epiphyseal growth plate and secondly leads to fusion of epiphyses to the shaft. Glucocorticoids have permissive role on growth hormone, that is cortisol, and physiological doses are required for growth. Doses excess than normal inhibit the growth, and inhibition takes place at tissue level. So insulin again stimulates the growth. Diabetic children do not grow, and the carbohydrates, proteins plus insulin, along with insulin only growth occurs. Though the child eats how much ever of carbohydrates and proteins, if insulin is not present, growth does not take place. So that's all for today's class. I hope you all understood. So physiology of growth is very important. It may come as a short question or very short question for you. So thank you all.